There was a time when I thought I was in love, but looking back now, I realize I was just trapped in a cycle of anxiety, mistaking survival instincts for intimacy. Love, back then, didn't feel peaceful. It felt like pressure, like walking on emotional eggshells, second-guessing every word I said, every look she gave me, every pause in her replies. I wasn't present in those moments. I was consumed, checking my phone constantly, waiting for a message that would quiet the storm inside me. If hours passed without a response, I didn't just feel disappointed, I felt rejected. I felt abandoned. And I called that being in love. But it wasn't. It was fear disguised as desire, obsession disguised as affection. At the time, I couldn't see it for what it was. All I knew was that I needed her attention like I needed air. I thought the highs and lows meant it was real. When she messaged me, I felt euphoric. When she didn't, I spiraled. I wasn't choosing her with clarity, I was clinging to her with desperation. It was like my nervous system was wired to depend on her responses just to feel stable. I lived in a constant state of what if she doesn't care anymore? What if she found someone else? What if I said too much, or too little, or the wrong thing? And every time I tried to calm down, some part of me would whisper, just text her, just check in, just say something. I wasn't trying to manipulate. I was trying to survive. I thought if I could just get it right, if I could say the perfect thing, show her how much I cared, then maybe she wouldn't leave. I didn't want love. I wanted safety. I wanted the anxiety to stop. I used to believe the solution was finding the right woman, the one who would always reassure me, who would never withdraw, who would always make me feel secure. But that belief was the root of the problem. I was placing the responsibility for my self-worth in someone else's hands. I was looking for a woman to calm the chaos. I refused to face in myself. What I didn't understand is that anxious attachment isn't about being needy, it's about being scared. Scared that love will disappear. Scared that affection always comes with conditions. Scared that one wrong move will lead to abandonment. Somewhere along the line, maybe in childhood, maybe after repeated heartbreak, I had linked love to instability. And once that happened, I could only feel connected if I felt anxious. If I felt calm, I assumed something was wrong. It took a long time to realize that what I had been calling love was actually a trauma response. That the butterflies weren't romance, they were warning signs. That constant overthinking wasn't passion, it was panic. I had mistaken chaos for chemistry, inconsistency for excitement, and control for connection. And until I saw that clearly, I kept repeating the same story, confusing emotional instability with intimacy, and calling that love. Healing didn't start with a breakthrough, it started with a breakdown. I was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally, drained from constantly scanning for signs, replaying conversations, trying to decode silences, and fighting invisible battles in my head. I realized I couldn't live like that anymore. I couldn't keep waking up in a state of emotional survival, waiting for a text to feel calm, or depending on someone else's mood to determine my worth. That's when I hit the wall. The moment I stopped chasing and started observing. The moment I stopped blaming her and started asking, what the hell is happening inside me? I started to pay attention. Every time I felt the urge to text, just to feel close, I paused. Every time I overanalyzed something she said, I asked myself, why am I so activated right now? What was really going on beneath the surface? And over again, I found the same answer. I was scared. Scared she'd leave. Scared she'd find someone better. Scared she'd wake up one day and realize I wasn't enough. That fear was running the show. Not love, not logic, just fear. And when you're operating from fear, you don't connect, you cling. You don't trust, you test. You don't relate, you react. I was trying to soothe my anxiety by controlling the dynamic. If I could just be perfect, always available, always attentive, always responding at the right moment, in the right tone, maybe then she'd stay. But that perfection was killing me. It was exhausting and fake. And ironically, the more I tried to control the relationship, the more I lost control of myself. So I started doing the uncomfortable thing. I stopped reacting. That was the first and hardest step. When I felt the panic rise, I didn't act on it. I breathed. I let the discomfort stay without trying to fix it. At first, it felt unbearable, like sitting in a room full of alarms and forcing myself not to run. But little by little, I started to see that I could sit in that feeling and survive it. I didn't have to silence it with her attention. I didn't need to rush to fix what hadn't even broken yet. I learned that anxiety feels urgent, but it rarely is. This wasn't about pretending I didn't care. It wasn't about detaching emotionally or becoming cold. It was about retraining my nervous system. Teaching my body that silence is not a threat, that space isn't abandonment. That I don't have to be constantly available to be loved. That I don't need to prove myself every second just to be chosen. The more I held stillness, the more powerful I felt. It wasn't just about calming my mind, it was about reclaiming authority over it. Every moment I didn't act out of panic. I created space between stimulus and response. And in that space, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. That was the beginning of security. Not just in relationships, but in myself. As I healed, my entire perspective on women and relationships began to shift. I stopped seeing women as these flawless beings whose attention validated my worth. I stopped idealizing them, stopped projecting fantasies onto them, stopped chasing their approval like it was the only thing that could make me feel whole. Anxious attachment had me convinced that if I just found the one, everything inside me would settle. But what I finally understood was this: I wasn't in love with her, I was in love with the idea that being chosen by her would fix me. When I let go of that illusion, I started seeing women more clearly, not as saviors, not as fantasies, but as human beings, flawed, inconsistent, real, and from that grounded place, I wasn't so afraid to lose them anymore, because I no longer believed they were the source of my peace. That peace had to come from me. I shifted my energy inward. I stopped obsessing over why she was pulling away and started asking why that distance triggered me so deeply. I stopped externalizing the pain and began holding space for it. Instead of thinking, she's making me feel abandoned, I'm feeling abandoned, and I get to support myself through that from that place of self-awareness. I started to lead, emotionally, mentally, physically. I brought presence instead of panic, direction instead of desperation. I stopped waiting for her to guide the relationship dynamic. I became the one who set the emotional tone. And something unexpected happened. The more grounded I became, the more attracted she became. Because women don't want to carry your anxiety, they want to feel anchored by your calm. They want to feel safe in your presence, not be responsible for it. That distinction changed everything. At some point, I realized closure wasn't something I had to chase, it was something I could create. I had spent years thinking I needed long, drawn-out conversations to make peace with endings. I thought if I could just get her to explain why she pulled away, why she changed, why things didn't work, then I'd feel okay. But the truth is, most of the time, that clarity never comes. People ghost, people change, people leave without warning. And when you're anxiously attached, that silence feels unbearable. It feels like a wound that never got to scab over. But eventually, I learned, not every story gets a proper ending. Some doors close quietly, and you have to walk away anyway. That's where boundaries came in, not as walls to keep people out, but as filters to protect my peace. I started enforcing them without drama. If someone was inconsistent, I didn't chase, I distanced. If a woman played games or tested my reactions, I didn't argue, I disengaged. I wasn't being cold, I was being clear. And that clarity made me powerful. I stopped explaining myself just to be understood. I stopped justifying my standards to be accepted. I wasn't rude, I was firm. I wasn't harsh, I was honest. And the more I stood in that energy, the more respect I earned, not just from women, but from myself, because I was no longer abandoning my own needs just to keep the connection alive. That's the thing about boundaries, they don't push the right people away. They push the wrong ones away. The ones who don't respect your peace, the ones who thrive off your confusion. And once I truly understood that, I stopped fearing loss. I started trusting that anyone who couldn't meet me at my level didn't belong in my life. The real transformation happened when I stopped needing love to fill a void. I no longer dated from a place of desperation, from that subtle fear whispering, "Don't mess this up or she'll leave." I let go of the idea that someone else's affection would finally make me feel complete. I began to approach dating from abundance. If she liked me, great. If she didn't, I didn't fall apart. I moved forward. I stopped holding on to people who were already slipping away, and I stopped interpreting rejection as proof that I wasn't enough. I also changed how I communicated. When I felt anxious, I didn't explode, accuse, or demand. I said things like, "I feel disconnected lately," instead of lashing out with, "You don't care about